It is the Anfield Wrap. I am Neil Atkinson and I'm joined by Josh Sexton, by Neil Docking and by Steve Graves. Liverpool beat Brentford by 3-0. We'll come on to that in a second or two. For this season, the Anfield Wrap is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. The Green King Sport venues are showing every televised Liverpool match over the course of the season, so you can get your mates together and get down to the local Green King pub and get close to the action. They've got an app, but they've also launched the Green King Sport Instagram page, which will be home to fan content, deals and competitions through the season. They've already given away Champions League final tickets, it says here, and signed shirts. Good Lord, so you don't want to miss out. If you follow them on Instagram, you won't just be the first to know about all this, but you help the Anfield Wrap too, so please do consider doing that. And this Champions League final tickets could be Europa League final tickets, and the Champions League is where Liverpool are undoubtedly headed. With Josh Sexton, I'm headed to the United States. We fly out tomorrow, and we are live in Chicago on Wednesday, Vancouver on Thursday. We are in LA on Friday, but don't even bother if you haven't bought tickets already. It's a sellout. They'll be queuing round the block, and they won't be able to get in. LA is sold out on Friday night. Saturday in Phoenix, Sunday in Austin, and Monday in Atlanta. I want to see full rooms for all of them. I'd like them all to sell out in an ideal world. Really excited about all of them. So if you go to theanfieldwrap.com/TAW, the three letters, consonant, vowel, consonant, in a countdownish way, which is a reference all the Americans get, followed by live. So theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live for that. Also, we've been nominated for Best Club Podcast in the FSA Awards. If you follow all relevant things, you can find out how to vote for us in that. We'll probably put something on social at some point, and you might want to vote for us. And while you're there, you can vote for Jamie Carragher, and you can vote for Mohamed Salah to win things as well. With a bit of luck, people doing it the other way round will have voted for us. But one never knows how this stuff's going to work. Josh, Steve and Neil, Liverpool 3, Brentford 0. Steve, it's just a strong win in the end. They played their way into the game. It felt like he was trusting the starting 11 to do it. It's exactly the sort of thing that we actually needed. It wasn't anything mad. It didn't turn into a 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. It didn't turn into this feels like a bit of an oddity. It felt like, no, this is what we're going to do to good teams. Brentford will finish somewhere between 9th and 12th. To good teams at home this season, this is what we've done to Brentford. It's what we've done to Villa. It's what we've done to West Ham. It looks like this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, strong, confident, fluent performance. It was back to the script, if you like, after Liverpool. It's sort of like we've played loads of little side games, like when you play, in a computer game, like we've had to do this thing, and then back to the main narrative is Liverpool doing this at home. And that's so far the dominant theme of the season for me is just there being no trouble at home. And that is a real change, I think. Not necessarily in terms of results, because our home form over seasons now is exceptional, but just in terms of how it all feels on the day. No real thrills and spills. I mean, you can have there's obviously the big chance Brentford have early in the game, but I just think there's a sense now for Liverpool if that chance goes in, then Liverpool are fine anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in the ground is thinking if we concede first here we've got no chance, because the evidence before our eyes that we've seen. But now to do it with a clean sheet, with a performance that we grew into, with it being as well not by any means the first choice in a couple of positions, but Liverpool being able to show that they can sort of do that they can reshape a little bit, they can look different in terms of personnel, in terms of the sort of shape on paper, but the overall approach looks the same, is hugely encouraging. And the way the manager was talking after the game, I think tells you, he started talking about March and April, and the need to be there then, which is essentially saying we're in it. While you're sort of dampening expectations, you're also fueling them by saying things like that, which is absolutely great, and that's where we should all be, where we should all feel, and that's how it should look. Week in, week out. There's games like the one coming up which are exceptional and special and require different things, but week in, week out, your bread and butter is that, and that's how it looks.
It is the bread and butter, Neil, and that's the way in which they've treated it all the way through the campaign. I think, they are looking at Anfield as though expect us to score 3 goals. There will be 3 goals. There might be 4, but there will at the very least be 3. And I think that there's something else that they're therefore able to do. I think that opponents beginning to think these are possibly going to score 3 goals means they're thinking to themselves, well, we need to try to find a bit of a way to force the issue. And I think they dangle a little bit of a carrot for Brentford over the course of the game. Brentford they're they're a bit of an odd team. I'd say they're a very distinctive team. They're their own proposition, but they are simultaneously, they're not a gang of shrinking violets. This is not Allardyce's West Brom, who are just going to basically occupy the penalty area for 70 minutes of the game. And I think that having the courage to invite them on and then looking to exploit the space is something Liverpool did really well.
Yeah, we definitely did. I like the idea that Toulouse was an optional side quest.
Bournemouth and Luton in a way.
As some of the players seem to treat it. I think the concentration wasn't quite there on Thursday, but certainly we were switched on from the start yesterday. And a big part of that, I think, is because of the threat that Brentford pose. They're an awkward team, I always think, that they really challenge us. Obviously, there's the physicality, but there's some real pace, certainly. Front two are a menace on the counter. They look dangerous, certainly until the second goal went in. I was before the game, I was quite worried, I have to say, that I thought we weren't necessarily going to be in the best place after the week we've just had. And early on, they gave us a bit of a fright. I'd say, with the ball that ricochets across the box. Wissa should do better with the header, and is it Pinnock who puts it wide? And then obviously there's the chance on the counter where we've pushed right up. Trent's positioning maybe leaves a little to be desired, and it's an extraordinary save from Allison. But once the first goal went in, I was never under any doubt that we were going to claim the 3 points. And I think there's just a confidence that oozes around the place at the moment at Anfield. Sometimes it feels almost strangely subdued. Like, a lot of people have talked about the atmosphere not being that electric this season. I think it's because in pretty much every home game, I've been absolutely sure of victory. There's not really been any peril. I mean, the West Ham game maybe a tad, but generally I've just been confident from the start that the goals are going to flow. We have so much in attack that you think, as you say, we're routinely scoring 2 or 3 goals at home. So even if we were to concede, you'd still think, well, we've got more than enough in the tank to see this through. So I almost think the atmosphere's dipped a little bit because these are just, it's almost like a 3-0 win is becoming the new routine home performance for Liverpool, which is a wild statement, really.
It's a wild statement, Josh, but it's an accurate one. And as I say, Brentford choose to have a bit more of a go certainly than they did at Chelsea, or maybe Chelsea just pushed them back in more of a way, and Brentford chose to be a little bit more passive. They have a bit of a go at Old Trafford and create a fair few opportunities first half. So it may well just be that the nature of the way in which a game played out. But I'll say again, I just think that sort of in the end suited us a little bit. I think the fact that their blood was up, got all our blood up, they weren't able to sort of to play dead or anything like that, and suddenly there is space. And then, well, in the first half at least, there's Darwin Nunez.
Yeah, he's just absolutely everywhere, isn't he? We've talked about it so much this season, how, there was a point earlier in the season where I was looking at Darwin Nunez and thinking he was becoming a more complete footballer, and I still stand by that. But I almost thought he'd ditched the chaos element of things. He's very much brought the chaos back in a more controlled way, but it's felt like it's come to a crescendo in recent weeks with the miss against Toulouse at home and all these kinds of things, the miss against Luton. That there has been that real sort of element of chaos back in his game, but he's still such a handful for teams. And in terms of the game in general, I almost found myself comparing it to 2 of the other 3-0 wins we've had at Anfield this season. The Villa game, and that Brentford do give it more of a go than Nottingham Forest, who's the other game I was comparing it to, and that they're a better team than Nottingham Forest and a worse team than Villa. But there's a real sort of interesting thing in that there genuinely is levels of opponent that Liverpool are going through there, and finding ways to nullify what Villa want to do in that game, finding ways to nullify what Brentford want to do in that game yesterday by sort of, almost, it felt like they were really tangibly keeping Mbermo and Wissa away from each other, because they want to do that split strike thing of, we'll be 60 yards away from each other, and then suddenly we're all around Van Dijk and we're swarming, or suddenly one of them's at the front post, one of them's at the back post. Liverpool found a real sort of clever way to nullify that in a way they didn't have to do against Nottingham Forest. Forest were, they were sort of set up well,
they were
but
very passive. Forest.
Yeah, they never really threatened at all, and that's probably a virtue of the injuries they had up top in particular, and Anthony Elanga almost being the out ball in that game. But I found that really interesting watching that yesterday, how much of almost a tactical battle it became. But Liverpool are doing tactical battles not by just beating teams 1 and 2-0 at the moment. They're doing it by saying, we'll work this out tactically over the course of the 90 minutes, but then we'll still beat you 3-0 by the end of it.
They are Brentford, when I say, Neil, their own proposition, they do lots of interesting percentage things all over the pitch. I think they're brilliant from breakdowns. The number of times they pick up clearances around the penalty area from both sides, their own clearances and the opposition ones, and in this case, obviously, this game, Liverpool's. They're great from recoveries, they're great from restarts, they're really switched on. That's one of the reasons that makes the second goal even more bemusing. Brentford are not a football team that stop. But they really did stop. And, you know, if we were doing the Brentford podcast today, one of the things I'd be saying is, what was going on there? Because everyone just looks to stop. The keeper sort of trundled across the line. I couldn't believe it when I watched it back on Match of the Day 2 last night, in terms of, if he leaps for it, he may well get it. He just sort of decides. It's like he's willing it into going out. For a side, as I say, that I will praise, and will praise off even the back of yesterday's performance with the 3-0 and say that they are a distinct opponent, I find that to be a really curious lapse.
Especially when we've had such a recent example of a goal being given in similar circumstances in the Newcastle Arsenal game. I mean, the reaction on the Kop was absolutely muted. We all just stood around looking at each other. What's happened there? Then?
Salah as well. Salah was laughing.
Yeah. And as you know, as mentioned on the post-match show yesterday, the goalie then setting up for the goal kick, and everyone, let's just pretend it wasn't a goal, and the referee won't give it. It was startling how they all froze in that moment, because, as you say, up until that point they'd been really smart, and they'd used their moments really wisely. I was really impressed by Jensen. He's the number 8, Jensen. Yeah. There was a ball, not the one for the counter attack, the Moemo chance, but there was another where he was on the opposite flank, where he lifted it up and over our defence. And I think it bounced awkwardly, and I'm not sure if it was Matip just managed to deal with it in the end. I thought he was really smart.
I was delighted when he went off.
Yeah, I was too. I thought it was when he went off, I thought it was almost a sign. Well, that was that then.
Yeah, I thought we'd seen them off at that point.
Yeah, because he's absolutely their creative spark, and especially because they have got a long injury list, haven't they? They're missing some key players, certainly in midfield. So yeah, he was really impressive, I thought. But in the moment, going back to the goal, it was staggering really how everybody just froze, and it just shows Mo Salah the shrewdness. You know, does the smart thing. Just such a simple finish, and then we'll see what happens afterwards.
Yeah, there was definitely an element to that with that, Steve. It did just feel as though, almost the way Salah was, just so calm. I think it's in part because you just think it's gone out, and you think, I'll just add this in, and then we'll worry about the next bit later on. But it counted as his second goal of the game, and he's obviously so important to Liverpool, full stop. But in that moment, it was just striking. It was a genuinely odd passage of football that you don't get that many of.
Yeah, it was, and you know, the only person who's totally switched on is Kostas Tsimikas, and he does everything. You know, it's a fantastic recovery to get that ball, you know, to get the ball of that. It's not one of those where he's running out of play and he's just, you know, it's just on the line and he's a bit lucky. He is responsible for that goal, for exactly the opposite of him not, you know, what we said about him on Thursday was you know, not switching on, and he absolutely did in that moment.
And the pass is to Gakpo, isn't it? It's not even intended for Tsimikas.
Exactly. He reads that. He's exceptional. Salah definitely doesn't think it's in. But what he does is the sensible thing, you know, is play to the whistle, all the things that you get told, you know, all the basics.
All the old values.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's in that vein now where just goals and assists they're just happening, you know, and it's remarkable really the extent to which people are coming away going, I don't know if he played that well today, and it does not matter. And also I think he did play well in this game, and I think he needed maybe the performance, but the outcomes is remarkable, and you know they continue to be record breaking, and it's almost like a record every week at the minute. I think if you're looking at a week on Saturday at 12:30, you know, who are the players, you know, most likely to score in that game? It's the top 2 goal scorers in the Premier League, and they're both in that game, and one of them is ours. And Liverpool, you know, we endlessly find ways, I think, to try and find ways to. I think because it's so hard to think about life without him, that you try and find ways to say it'll all be fine. But I'm so glad he's there. So glad he's producing the way he's producing.
I read this morning that Chelsea at home in January, the dour 0-0 that left us all questioning our choice of hobby, is the last time that Salah didn't register a goal or assist at Anfield in the league, which is just absolutely staggering, and it points to what you've just said there.
Yeah, he is still everything, but in a healthy way. I think in a way that. It wouldn't be the end of the world if he picks something up over the next couple of weeks and Liverpool go with a front three of some of the other lads who are scoring and creating loads of goals. But he is so fundamental to the overall dynamic and the overall way Liverpool are playing and every ambition they've got for this season. And yeah, in that moment he just makes the right decision, and as he does with the finish for the goal. He's just so clear-sighted. You know, when he misses chances now, you know, he misses a big one. Not like it's after, isn't it, the first goal? But he misses them by essentially trying to do the right thing. And he is almost always now making the right decision, whether that's the pass he picks or the finish he applies. And experience is allied still to the fact that he can still do it physically. And yeah, we've just got one of the best players in the world, and we forget that. Other sides forget that at their peril.
One thing that I think other sides don't forget at the peril, Josh, is the concept of Allison Becker. He is also one of the best players in the world. He is, for me, I think he looks like the best goalkeeper in the world. I think we need to kick around the idea he might be the best goalkeeper ever to play the game. But we'll try to stay relatively calm. I'm not saying he should rename the Yashin Award the Allison Award, but maybe they'll get there in the fullness of time. I think conceptually he's in players' heads. So there's two really good examples. There's the Mbueno one-on-one, which I, by the way, think is going wide, because Mbueno was thinking, I've got to do so much to beat this fella, it's ridiculous. But he still gets a hand to it anyway and pushes it further wide. And the Wissa header, I think, late in the second half, where it's actually a better chance than it feels. But Wissa, again, is so conscious, but also Becker fills all the space. He can do anything with this ball. So he ends up trying to force it. He's just trying to think, I can't deal with this, because his anticipation's so good. And I think the extent to which he's in the heads of forwards, it is Allison Becker, I am going to have to do something brilliant to beat him, is so important, the way in which he's able to keep goal.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? Like the first thing that occurred to me when you said that there is I remember a story that Glenn Price told. I think it must have been when he just started working for the club when Allison Becker signed, and he said one of the things he'd noticed in training from Liverpool's players was how much they were trying to put everything into the top corners, how much they're sort of trying to bend things round to be right into the top corner in order to beat Allison Becker, and that's what I think you're getting with sort of Premier League strikers now is they're coming up against him. And like I don't know, like what is the goal that you score against Allison Becker? Like what is the sort of textbook goal you score against Allison Becker? Because there may be other teams who you can sort of look at their goalkeeper and think, we were talking about it off air then about their keeper sort of parrying shots, and why Liverpool may have had more long shots in the second half and stuff like that. That's a team sort of working out how you play against a goalkeeper. I think if you're a backroom staff of another Premier League team now and you sat down analysing Allison Becker, I don't know what the best goal is that you score against him, because you see a range of different chances there. And I found myself, like, there was a 2-minute spell where Liverpool just made Allison Becker sort of make a couple of saves yesterday, and I found myself almost quite enjoying it. I'm like, oh yeah, we get to see another one of our players flex his muscles now, and we almost didn't need him to. Like we didn't need him to make those saves in the way we need him to make great saves in the past. But it's just sometimes quite nice to remind yourselves how good Allison Becker is, and remind the other team, like, yeah, this lad who plays is one of the best to ever play the game. And you say about them renaming the Yashin Award, he's not even up for it this year, which honestly, like, genuinely, that's like,
you've got to. I'm all right with all. You've got to win things and be around that. Next year he can absolutely be all over it, as we win every trophy going.
Well, next year will be when they have to rename it. So it can
That'll
be.
do.
It can be the last year the Yashin Award can go to someone else, and then next year it's the Allison Becker Award.
Won by Allison Becker,
Yep.
year one. Steve, there's bits where it reminds me of Schmeichel in terms of it's Peter Schmeichel, which I think does begin to happen towards the end of it at Manchester United. The extent to which conceptually Schmeichel is in the minds of attackers. You think you're through on goal, but you've got a Peter Schmeichel problem. You're not just through on goal. And I think that this is where Allison now lives. This is the company he keeps.
I think it's where he now lives, and I think Liverpool have got two other footballers who are on paper straight away, and we've talked about one of them. We're probably going to talk about one of them later on as well. And I mean that's an incredible position to be in. And there's others in the wings who are stepping to that status. I think you start the game and it almost neuters the idea of a sort of a long range effort being even worth attempting, which takes something else out of sort of a string out of the few strings that sides have in their bow when they play Liverpool. It takes one away, and then you create brilliant one-on-one chances, and they're not brilliant one-on-one chances because he's massive, and he looms so large in your head. You've also got, maybe as a striker as well, you've got that thing of just somewhere in them, no one's going to judge me too harshly if I don't take this chance because it's Allison Becker. He's massive, but he's not just, Schmeichel was that kind of monolithic kind of, and I've seen goalkeepers be able to do that just through their sheer size, but his agility, his overall quality is I think is streets ahead. Certainly,
he's so active,
certainly ahead of sort of later period Schmeichel, which is where the aura preceded him rather than even necessarily the quality and also the way Liverpool play is we surrender more chances than that Manchester United team ever did. I mean, I'm certainly in my mind. There would be stats that could prove me wrong, I guess, but it did feel like there were times when someone would go to Manchester United and just you'd never get a chance at Old Trafford. Anyone in the sort of bottom 10. Whereas Liverpool, we by our very nature, certainly our nature at the minute, and it is that we are going to give sides opportunities just because it does. As we touched on with Brentford, it gives us a chance to open the game up, and that's our next challenge is sort of against. We haven't seen us against the very top or the very bottom yet, and I think that or succeed and excel against the very top or the very bottom. Tottenham comes with caveats. Luton was a concern, and that's your next thing as a team overall is how do you offer something to sides that just aren't going to take it anyway? When we go to Burnley, we go to Sheffield United quite soon. That will be the interesting next thing for Liverpool to show what they can do once they've shown what they can do at the Etihad.
It's how active he is on the ball as well.
I love the back heel late in the game. I love the back heel.
The back heel's outrageous, isn't it?
It's absolutely outrageous, yeah.
I mean, he has the one slip, doesn't he, towards the end, but still manages to play a perfect pass out.
Into midfield.
Into midfield.
But yeah, bypasses the line.
But there was one in the first half where he plays it with the outside of his left boot out onto the left wing, and absolutely bent it like anything, the outside of his left foot.
Yeah.
And I just thought, why is he doing that? Why is he even trying that?
Everyone thought it had gone out.
Honestly, it felt a little bit yesterday like he was in a bit of an experimental phase at times. Like, what else can I do?
But he entices forwards on all the time as well.
Constantly.
It's not for show. It's not. It's an effective part of
That's
our
why
play,
he's kicking off on the cop. He's like going, this is the plan. Stop being annoyed about the plan. And I liked him having a bit of a row with the crowd when I saw it back on the video, and they didn't make anything on match today because it actually led to a chance. We went up the other end. But his point he's making is, I'm trying to entice them. I want them to come this close. I want that lad to move there, that lad to move there, him to come for it. They've got to press as a unit. They can't not press as a unit, but guess what? There's space. Yeah. He's literally going, come on. And then our crowd are going, ooh, and he's like, lads, have you not watched?
But even though it's been, how many years has he been here now? 5-6 years? Yeah. It's just so institutionalised that a striker bears down on goal, get rid of it. It is, what we were all...
Kick it straight back to them.
Yeah, it's what we were all...
Just too far away, but back to them,
yeah,
please.
It's what we were always told for like 20 odd years, 30 odd years, or however old you are, a certain number. So yeah, he challenges all of our beliefs on a weekly basis.
The other thing to go with the goalkeeper, Josh, is the quality of the attackers. We've discussed Salah. What was really interesting was the quality of the finishing. The XG between the two sides after the fact was quite close, 1.47 to Liverpool, according to StatsBomb. Brentford 1.42. Post-shot XG that I'm often a little bit suspicious of, but it's useful as a guide. Actually had Liverpool at 3.11. So that's effectively the likelihood of when the shot leaves the boot that it will end up in the back of the net. It's more used as a tool to rate the performances of goalkeepers than anything else. But it's fascinating to me that this week the post-shot XG is absolutely spot on. Liverpool should score 3 goals. They do score 3 goals, and that's a bit of the flip of last weekend against Luton, where Liverpool's expected goals was approaching 3, but because a lot of those opportunities they hadn't actually worked the goalkeeper, it ends up obviously with the post-shot XG being significantly low. And my point here though is that Salah gets himself the brace. There's Darwin's 2 that are chalked off. There's the quality of Jota's A, finish, and B, finishing. And I think that this is the key thing, that whilst Liverpool are on top in games, if Liverpool are creating chances, especially at Anfield, the likelihood is, given the quality of Liverpool's forwards, it only needs one of them to play well, and if 2 of them finish well, then you're going to score a few goals.
Yeah, and the thing we've said all season is that each one of the 5 forwards has such different skill sets, and yet each one of them is scoring completely different goals as well. Like that's probably the first goal in a while now, probably since Jota first signed that. I remember him sort of hitting one of them from outside the box, and particularly not sort of bending it into the far corner in the way he did as well. I almost, whether I didn't know he didn't have it in his locker or forgot he had it in his locker, because you almost associate Jota with the sort of goal mile scrambles at the back post or the back post headers and those kinds of things.
He felt it was there, didn't he?
Yeah,
he was looking for it, and then he went, right, now I'm going to finish.
And that's it almost feels like a confidence thing, that, because you sort of see that a couple of times with Darwin. Listen, he obviously scores the goal against Bournemouth, but there's a lot of times where Darwin's like, I'm looking for that far corner, I'm looking for that far corner. Okay, it's not there, I'll pass it off to somebody else. The pass he plays to Mo yesterday, by the way, there's a serious telepathy between those 2 footballers, because I never saw that pass in a million years. And it's, again, one of them where he's looking for the far corner and he just sort of chips it across the edge of the box, and then it arrives at Salah's feet. And I'm like, how is this a thing? Like, how is the telepathy between the forwards, but them 2 in particular? particular so strong, and they're all just scoring different types of goals. The one goal I would like to see return is the sort of Salah bending it into the far corner. I think there was another one of them that he sort of speculatively tries yesterday, but it was sort of nowhere near. But yeah, I mean, there's so much danger in that, and I think if you're a Premier League defence coming up against these forwards at the moment, it's gone beyond the Steven Gerrard all the best territory. Like you basically have to plan for them, for at least two of them to be on fire and to be good, and probably two of them to score. And at what point do you think we can win a football match if that's what you're having to deal with on a weekly basis?
I think the key element of this, Neil, is that in real time, I think you can add the quality of Darwin's two finishes to the other ones that we're talking about, because he doesn't think he's offside for either of them. One, he is quite substantially offside. The other one is just a little bit of a boot. It happens from time to time. But they're brilliantly taken, both of them as well, the proper strikers' goals. So you are back to sort of thinking, well, all three of them have shown what they can do in front of goal. And for me, there's loads and loads of bits that you can get carried away with. Like, I love lovely passes. I love great hold-up play. But ultimately just thinking, from 20 yards, all lads are going to net. It's just such a pressure off, and if anything, it's a pressure off the creative function. It means you can relax a little bit more, because these can all create themselves, but they can definitely finish if you give them a sniff.
Yeah, certainly with these three as well. I mean, I love Diaz as a player, Luis Diaz, and he's got so much to his game, but I would say that still you feel like there could be a bit more end product. And Gakpo probably hasn't, well, certainly this season, had quite enough starts to maybe get into the rhythm of scoring regularly, but the other three, I mean, Darwin's, we talked on the show a couple of weeks ago, he's posting incredible numbers now in terms of a goal or assist every 60 minutes or so. Jota, 11 in his last 20, after nearly not scoring for a calendar year, 30-odd games, which is astonishing. Jota just playing with so much confidence, and as Josh said, he's scoring great goals now, and different types of great goals. If you think of him weaving through the midfield the other week in Europe, and then on Thursday night, another belter, and then again, the finish on Sunday. There's not really a situation where the ball falls to Jota in and around the box where I don't back him to finish, which is why I think, it's looking a bit ahead, but I'd certainly want him on the pitch away at the Etihad from the start, because where chances might be more few and far between, I want someone who's most likely to take one if one comes along.
And it's that opening goal thing as well, isn't it? It's like, I know he doesn't score the opening goal yesterday, but that's why you would want him on the pitch against a team like City, is because he still does loads of that opening goal thing. He still scores the sort of crucial goals for Liverpool.
Goals, doesn't
yeah,
he?
Exactly. And that's why you do want him to sort of be there to be the difference in those games.
And I don't feel like, I feel like in previous seasons, I used to hear a lot of groans and moans about Jota, about his all-round play, about him maybe surrendering it too easily, sometimes being a scruffy player. And I feel like over the last 6 months, certainly, that's something, end of last season, start of this season, that's something that's maybe started to dissipate. I don't really notice him giving the ball up as easily or being careless, which is something that people used to say about him. So Jota in particular, yeah, what a vein of form he's in. Nunez, I was gutted when the first goal was disallowed. That's the sort of offside you hate, where it looks to all intents and purposes that he's in line. But yeah, obviously an unerring finish inside the post. The other one, he's comfortably offside, isn't he? But again, he loves a bicycle kick, doesn't he? He loves any chance to sort of lob it over his head. But I thought his all-round play again yesterday, he deserved better really in terms of he should have ended up on the score sheet, because it was such a great all-round performance. I love Jurgen making a point of praising his pressing and the issue that was keeping him out of the team last season, and he's responded to that in the best possible way, taking that on board. The quick feet and the pass to Salah for the opening goal is a brilliant assist, and it's almost a trademark Salah finish. It's almost like, Henry had that goal that was the Henry goal. That is a trademark Salah one into the bottom corner there. But it was great play from Darwin in the build-up. And he's slightly unfortunate, I think, where Salah puts him in after that, just before half-time, where I don't think the pass is quite as good as it could have been.
Pass a little scruffy, bit bobbly.
I think Nunez is just a step too slow to recognise that it's almost too good a chance. He's almost like, hang on, and then he's on his bike, and the defender does really well. I mean, you sort of, I don't know what it was like in the ground, but for a minute you were like, wow, that feels like that's got to be a red card, and then you look and no, it wasn't. It was good cover defending. I mean, he possibly could have got his body in the way still, having got through. But you're picking hairs a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Splitting hairs.
Or picking.
Then we'll split. Then we'll do whatever.
The pressing thing's dead interesting, by the way, because I noticed there was a point where Brentford's keeper had the ball at his feet, and he was almost like willing Darwin to come towards him. And Darwin turned round and was like, if I'm going to go and press him, I need one of you to be behind me. And no one was probably within about 30 yards of him. And I think you'd never seen that last season because, as you say, Klopp was sort of almost calling out. So that intelligence that's come into his game now to the point where he's turning around and sort of bollocking. I think it was probably Szoboszlai. He's like, you need to be close to me, lad, because I could go for this and cause him a problem as long as you're there behind me.
Yeah, it's not just running towards people, is it? Pressing, it's about knowing when to and knowing when you can and then when you can't. I thought what I'd like is that he doesn't get desperate. He doesn't get angry. He seems more philosophical about the fact that he's had 2 goals chalked off. One of which I think he probably knew was offside, but the other one, it is so close, and it is. There's a conversation to be had about what the offside rule is for. Is it for ruling out goals like that? Well, was it designed for that? And I think there's probably a big conversation at some point about what the rules of the game are meant to be for. But it was given on the pitch. It wasn't like it was overturned. The linesman put his flag up. So Liverpool, though, I think just collectively responded well and recovered from there. Didn't feel like, we've blown our chance now, we're not going to do that.
I think there's an important bit of game theory, to be honest with you, Steve, where I feel as though you can be knocked by. I think there was a period, for instance, where we were in the 21-22 season where I think we were quite philosophical about VAR goals that were offsides that were given when the opponent scores, but we've looked to play them off. They're offside. We're then going, that's the plan all along, and we were able to be pretty relaxed about it, and it didn't sort of knock our morale. I think you going the other way. I think there's times where you have 2 disallowed, and all I'm thinking is, well, we know we can score.
Yeah,
we're going to score in a minute, and I think that builds confidence.
And there is a difference if you're Brentford. You're not catching us 20 yards with a high line and saying the plan worked. You basically we were fortunate there. We were fortunate, and you. It's almost like Liverpool just running through their rehearsals and showing you what they can do and showing you what's coming for you. And I think his composure to set up the goal. There's so many individual aspects of Matip winning the ball back, Trent's ball, which there's the easy ball out to Salah that you just go, just play him in there, and then he just fires it into Nunez, and it's almost like collectively they come up with this idea on the fly, and that's just so good. And Salah, his movement is exceptional, and his finish, there's just no doubt, is it? That's the sort of the absolute defining finish at the minute. Very similar to sort of Brighton and a few others that we've seen that he can provide. And I just think that Nunez having a game where not everything goes right, but he's still brilliant, is just so important and so key. And when that ball's fired in by Trent, he's not thinking, how can I make amends and score now? He's thinking, how can I supply the player who I love playing with and who loves playing with me? And those two are a unit. Those two operate so well together. And then you've just got the joy really of picking which is the third one at the minute. Not to say that those two are, one of them is the nailed-on starter in any first-choice Liverpool front three, and I think Nunez is pretty much there now. And then you just get to kind of pick what you fancy really, how you fancy it looking, and potentially getting 4 of them on the pitch, which we were able to do with minimum fuss and without it looking massively different to having a midfielder in there.
I was pleased to see him get the full 90 as well, because it seemed telling for a long period last season that he was always the first one to be substituted. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it seems pretty rare, I think, that he's had a full 90 minutes at Anfield. And I thought that was a reward for the performance as well and how all-encompassing it was.
Mentioned there about Gakpo in midfield, Josh. I thought he crafted really well, especially first half an hour when Liverpool had to win the right to play. I felt he was very present in terms of that when Liverpool needed someone to glide away with the ball and ask them a couple of questions. He was present in terms of that. I think it's possibly his best performance in that role. Not his best Liverpool performance, but his best performance in that role. And I think he can be really pleased with his work.
Yeah, I don't know if it's doing it down almost to say that it was workman. Like I was particularly happy with him second half. I got in and was speaking to the lads I was sitting with at half time and sort of said, we were causing Brentford so many problems. Like there was physically a point where Ben Mee is pointing at the left wing back he's got there, or whoever the centre half was, sort of inside of him, and saying, I don't know which one of us is meant to have Salah or Szoboszlai here, because Salah and Szoboszlai like tangibly switched positions by about 30 yards, and suddenly Brentford had no idea what to do. And I was like, I'd quite like to see us do that on the left hand side with Gakpo a bit more, because I almost wanted to see Gakpo getting more threatening positions, but it's almost because you find yourself trying to fix things that are not necessarily wrong with Liverpool's performance because it is sort of that nature, and that's where we were yesterday. And yeah, like you say, listen, if Gini Wijnaldum had put in that performance for Liverpool, you'd have said that was a pretty standard Gini Wijnaldum performance. Not in terms of the sort of, the carrying of the ball and all the recycling of possession and those sorts of things, but almost being so good and sort of so, again, workmanlike, which I think is probably does do it down a little bit, but being so many of those things that you want a number 8 for Liverpool to be. And this is our probably fourth or fifth choice forward at the moment. This sort of the wealth of riches and the ridiculousness of options that Liverpool have, and also the versatility of, and sort of tactical flexibility as a football team, is that you can slot someone who is he best off the left, is he best in the sort of false 9 role, is he more of a number 9 than that, and yeah, he plays number 8 yesterday and does it absolutely fantastically.
It's a reminder, Steve, something you've said in the past on these shows, that the Liverpool manager's job isn't to get every player to play 10 out of 10. It's not to get Cody Gakpo to play 10 out of 10. It's to win games. And at times, if you're Cody Gakpo, your job will be to provide a platform for someone else. And that's what I think he does marvellously yesterday. And Josh says workman damns him with faint praise. I don't think that necessarily does. I think some games you need workmen. And Cody Gakpo was that for Liverpool.
Yeah, people love to talk about, the sort of the lads to carry the piano and the ones to play it, and with those things, invoking all those things. But then when you see it on the pitch, you go, oh God, why is he carrying the piano? And a player who can be an elite forward but can also put in a workman-like performance in midfield is absolutely nothing to be sniffed at. And you can't judge him as if he was at number 9, as if he didn't take the chances that Liverpool needed to win the game, because other people took the chances that Liverpool needed to win the game. He's done that already this season, and Neil, you're right, he's not had quite the run of games, but he's quietly scored a few goals, and there've been some quite important goals as well. He's got the ability of, obviously he turns up and finishes late, and Trent Alexander-Arnold in particular, I think loves having him in and around the box. But sometimes you don't need that, which is an amazing position to be in for Liverpool. It's like you've got a forward who's one of the best around, who's in a decent vein of form, and Liverpool don't need him to play up front. That's a remarkable position to be in. They've got an explosive wide player who we all think is brilliant, and it was a revelation when he arrived and has been consistently good. And again, Liverpool right now have been able to afford to nurse him through a personal crisis, and then also now look again at what happens next with him. I mean, and we're in a fortunate position because 5 of them are fit, and that will not be the case throughout the season. But while we are in that fortunate position, it's just such a joy to watch them all kind of finding their feet in the season, all of them contributing in this way. And Gakpo, a real significant contribution, which, again, all of the words you use feel like you're slightly damning him with faint praise by saying a significant contribution. Not everyone needs to get the 9 out of 10. Loads and loads of 7s, and he was definitely one of those.
I thought he gave a good impersonation of what Curtis Jones has provided for us this season. Yeah. Talking about Wijnaldum, the recycling the ball, holding on to possession, also available to break and make runs to the box, just as Curtis can, but fulfilling a role for the team that's perhaps unheralded, unsung. Certainly when we've got so many absences in midfield, it's brilliant to have one of our 5 forwards be so able, it showed yesterday, to drop into that position.
I want to talk about Steve. I'd
like to talk about Steve.
I want to talk about the triangle of Endo, Van Dijk and Matip. Endo he's a different player to McAllister, and he's certainly a different player, and certainly in terms of level. This isn't to be overly critical, but he's a different player in terms of level to, say, Rodri. We know he's here to be a really good squad player for Liverpool, but one of the things I think happens yesterday in this game is I feel as though Endo, because he is defensively minded, I think he really helps free up both Van Dijk and Matip. Mm-hmm. Both of them in different ways to be able to burst forward, carry the ball, knowing that this player is going to fill in a way that McAllister wouldn't. And to me, that's really interesting. He is something different. So when he is something different, other players therefore play differently. Mm-hmm. And I think you see Virgil is so good, but I don't think you see the full range of what Virgil shows yesterday if it isn't Endo in front of him. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really weird thing to say, that a midfielder is liberating your centre-backs to be more expansive, but I do think that's what happens.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You talk about midfield providing a platform for forwards, and maybe it can work, it does work the other way. A midfielder like Endo, who can play centre back, we're told, and has done and can slot in. I think there's a sort of long term look at Bajcetic as that kind of thing. If he can sort of get his fitness back together and stuff like that. But at the minute, I thought that was his sort of most complete performance. He was really involved in everything. I think a couple of times when I've seen him at 6 for Liverpool, it's almost been a little bit not even like he's getting exposed as such, but I'm just like, I'm not quite sure how involved you are in what we're doing as a team. I think it's really encouraging to see him able to start having after the sort of Newcastle game and it all, there was such an extraordinary and exceptional game for him to start a Premier League game where things are just sane and it all kind of fits together. He gets to find his feet. He gets to establish what he can bring. His character, I think, is great. It's just the kind of player you could see him in a Rafa Benitez team. You could see him in any of the sort of eras of teams where you go, this side's got the character that I want to see, and he looks like he can have a bit of a laugh, but he can and he can enjoy the game. But he's also determined. He's hard as nails, and he will never not give you everything. And I think that's just a great starting position to have him in. And then you see Matip and Van Dijk and what they can, they're just really good footballers, and when you can get them involved, we talked about the first goal, which Matip is really involved in winning the ball high. Van Dijk's distribution is so good, but if it's really good coming from 10 yards further forward, then maybe it's even more potentially devastating. And you almost you sort of saw the Matip run again, which I feel like it'd been a little while. The sort of able to surge into space.
Get a couple of them.
You get a couple. Konate did it recently as well in another game. So I hope it's catching because I love that. I think it's great, and it's really low risk. Everyone panics as if it's like disastrous. It's like there's loads of lads can just drop in behind him. It's fine.
What I like, Steve, on that occasion, that twice for Matip and Van Dijk does it second half, is don't just do the run. Go and play centre forward.
Yeah.
Go on the penalty spot because I think that's what the Endo release is. He knows that Endo will fill in there. There was a period where Endo did 2 minutes on the pitch at right back because Trent was slowly almost one position at a time making his way back over. And I think that idea of, it's okay, I can go and do this here because the rest of them are going to remodel behind me. Lastly being, Endo will fill in is the big thing. And I always think when you go, you may as well just fully commit. There's no point then trying to sort of find your way back because you've actually disrupted things. You're better off just saying, right, I'm going to go and play centre forward, and Virgil does it and Matip does it.
Someone else is going to do that, and Van Dijk is probably one of the players I'd most trust to take a chance as well in this team. And we've seen Matip do it too, and they're both really good footballers at both ends of the pitch when they need to be. And having the players, having that confidence behind you, and I guess with Endo as well, he's played in lots of different teams in lots of different situations where you've had to paper over cracks, you've had to fill in, you've had to be versatile within games, not just week to week. And I think you just see that game intelligence he's got. He hasn't got everything you right, in the long term. You'd hope that he helps to have an effect on maybe our best three midfielders working out exactly how who plays that position and how they play it best. But yeah, him and Szoboszlai I thought made just a nice pair yesterday, and a good team together. He just seems to communicate really well, and yeah, just the overall vibe of Wataru Endo is I'm here for it.
Virgil van Dijk is just remarkably good at the minute, Neil. I mean, I feel as though we're going to say it all season, but I'm really pleased about that because not firstly it means he'll have been remarkably good, but also secondly, I think it's possible that at times we've taken precisely how good just a little bit for granted, and getting this resurgence from him allows us to dwell on it. I think he looks in better nick than he did in 21-22, and Liverpool get more than 90 points in 21-22. So he wasn't playing in a daft side by any stretch of the imagination, but it looks to me like he's just clicked up to that next level above where he was for that year. He's genuinely a joy to watch at the moment. He's a joy to watch in the ground.
It's similar to Salah in that regard, that in 21-22 perhaps wasn't his greatest individual season, and now he's stepped up a gear again after the troubles of last year. I think Van Dijk now is very near to his best. He's, as you say, he's dictating play from deep. He's constantly directing. He looks so strong in his individual battles now. I can't remember the last time I've seen him come off second best, maybe once or twice yesterday at the most. He might have lost maybe one aerial duel, perhaps from a set piece. In open play, certainly. He looks so switched on. And I think that he has a transformative effect of what we've known down the years on those around him. Joel Matip yesterday, I thought was fantastic. He maybe was a little bit at 6s and 7s for that early chance we talked where he didn't clear it particularly well after the Wissa header. But from that point on, I think Joel grew in stature, and a big part of that is just having Virgil alongside him, just an absolute rock. He's the foundation for what we're doing at the moment. I think in this sort of form, really, it puts us in a place where the sky is the limit for this team. And I know that we've got a huge test coming up away at the Etihad. And I think one thing that's stopping a lot of people getting carried away with their plaudits, not just to Virgil but the team as a whole, is because that looms on the horizon. I think a lot of people are reserving judgment until then. But we've got ourselves in a position where only 1 point behind them, where we can go there, and anything other than getting beat is a good result in my mind.
Absolutely. Every season that's the case. Will always be the case.
But especially so here, I think, because of what it would do in terms of momentum, and maybe giving that just that final bit of belief that perhaps is lacking, if not from the players, from some of the fan base. But Virgil, he's putting in these performances routinely now, and it's the fact of how mundane a game that is on paper. Brentford at home, it's not a game where particularly you think he would be buoyed for this, he'd be really switched on for this. Last season, there was a time where he was really struggling, it felt, when we played Manchester City, and he really rose to the challenge and put in a great performance against Erling Haaland. But I expect that from Virgil van Dijk, because I expect him to see it as a challenge, as an affront to him if people think that he won't be up to the challenge of Haaland. But it's the fact that he's been able to put these performances in, 9 out of 10 performances at home against Brentford, back to back, week after week, and again resting him in midweek is obviously helping him immensely in terms of what's given us in the league. But we also saw hugely the absence on Thursday, because it's a chasm when he's not there, because he's at such a level. There's no doubt in my mind that if we'd have gone there with Virgil playing on Thursday, if we needed to get a result, then absolutely we would have done.
Yeah, it feels like he's really sort of rising to this role of being captain as well. He's obviously come out and sort of spoke about doing the huddles before the match, and they're almost little captaincy things that people like to see. They almost maybe it's going a bit too far to say it's sort of tokenistic, but it feels like that sort of thing that you do as a captain. You implement these things into the dressing room and into the team to sort of boost team morale and have a bit of a tangible impact on the morale of the team. But as much as that, like I was thinking about when you said about him being better than 21-22 there, I mean, loads of people are saying it. This is the best he's played since the Pickford tackle. This is his best spell in the Liverpool side. And I think what was so different about 21-22 is that it just felt like he was a part of the system, and the system was sort of really working defensively in 21-22 in a way that it didn't need Virgil to be anything close to spectacular. And when I say spectacular, I don't mean making last-ditch tackles or any of that sort of thing, because he's never done that. It's the ones where a forward comes to challenge him and he goes, "Oh, you want to try and beat me in a foot race? Well, go on then. I'll give you a yard there, and I'll still beat you to it. And I'll calmly ease out of play, and actually I'll probably win a goal kick as well." And we're back to that level of Virgil now, where he really relishes that one-on-one duel. And I do sort of wonder, with hindsight, how much the injury had an impact on his mentality towards those things, because listen, we watch Virgil not break a sweat week in, week out, but it must take a toll on the body to have lads like Brian Mbeumo and these sort of Premier League strikers, Anthony Elanga, trying to beat you in a foot race week in, week out, because these are big physical lads, really quick lads. And maybe Virgil went through a point where he didn't necessarily trust that he could win those foot races.
The weeks off are helping.
Yeah. It just feels like we're back to that now. It feels like we're back to the best version of Virgil van Dijk, and I'm so pleased, because that it wasn't necessarily coming from within Liverpool's supporter base. It was probably coming more from outside. But there were questions about whether he was finished, and I think he's proven in no uncertain terms that he absolutely isn't.
But for someone who's probably the greatest exponent of it that I've ever seen, I used to think it odd as well. There used to be the criticism that he didn't love the art of defending. That almost the dirty work wasn't something that was within his remit. Yeah. But yesterday, the clearance off the line, where he's throwing himself at something to prevent a goal, and we saw the same from Matip with a brilliant block where Matip's flung into to make a block as well, a clearance. So I think that it's that engagement all the time, 100%, just desperate to keep the clean sheet. A real matter of pride for him at the moment. It's fantastic to see.
Okay. That's Brentford, sorted. If you want more and more on Brentford, subscribe to the Anfield Wrap, and there's lots and lots of shows, both immediately after the match yesterday and more to come through the day-to-day review, and 5 things. Both will be really good. Josh, the women, whilst that match was going on, got a good point at Tottenham. Tidy enough, possibly could have been worth 3 in the end. Sitting 5th in the table, they could just do with scoring more goals. They've only got 7 and 6, and that'd be your overarching concern. But the job is to get those points on the board. They've nailed that. It's really impressive. They've got to go to Chelsea away next Saturday. That will be very tough, but it's about as good a start for the season as Liverpool Women could have hoped.
Absolutely, yeah, and those first 2 games sort of helped that massively. But you mentioned about them needing to score more goals. That's the biggest thing. You sort of hope that yesterday kicks on now is Sophie Roman-Howe getting her first goal, and you saw how made up all her teammates were for her as well. Everybody was all over social media giving it feed the Haug and she will score and all these kinds of things. You just really hope she can sort of kick on from here. It's been pretty clear. There's been a little bit of a period transition already of trying to bleed her into the squad. It was Katie Stengel was such a crucial part of how this Liverpool team played, in that her hold up play was able to bring so many other players into it, but also her just crucial goals that she scored at such crucial times for this team. That does leave a big void in the team, and if Roman-Howe can fill that role for Liverpool and then some, because we all sort of believe that she's a better finisher and almost poacher type than Katie Stengel is, but also the hold up play does look like it's there because she is big and physical. Then hopefully that's a good thing, and yeah, Liverpool have made good work of games against Chelsea in recent years, and that they've kept themselves in those games. So you almost do feel like you're quietly confident going into that, and there's been so many good performers over the course of the season. Marie Herbinger is one who I've been watching week in, week out, and she looks like such a good signing for Liverpool. So yeah, you do go into that one confident, but as you say, it will be very tough.
It'll be very tough indeed. Chelsea will be massive favourites. We'll talk about the bigger picture on the men's side. Chelsea showing it is a tough place to go. City get a good point. It follows Liverpool's good point and Arsenal's good point. That is the truth of the matter on this, Steve. Chelsea, by the end of the campaign, I think they may well look like one of the most impressive sides in the division. The table sort of reflects that. I think is still a bit of variance in it for them, but there's so many good players, and they're clearly being very, very well organised, and you can't argue with the spirit that you saw there yesterday. But the key thing for us right now is that it does look again like it's quite a clear top 5. I suspect it may become a top 3 again by Christmas, but it is a very, very clear top 5, and Liverpool are absolutely banging it.
Yes, you're right. It may become a top 3. I'm so impressed by Aston Villa, and it's an interesting one because you sort of feel like it will go wrong for them somewhere, but I'm not sure there's an obvious where it goes wrong point. They'll look at their Man City game coming up in a 2 or 3 games and see that as a real opportunity, and it's a real opportunity for us. I think you're looking at the 3 games City have got coming up. Chelsea and others have shown the blueprint at the minute for Manchester City, which is you can get at them and you can harass them, and they don't always know what to do when it gets a bit chaotic. Chelsea is that's looked a better. It's weird because they've got probably their worst home record maybe in their history, and yet somehow are good at home because they should have beaten Arsenal. They threw that game away. They had winning positions against Manchester City, and against Liverpool. I think if you were a Chelsea fan coming away from that, you could make the case that there was 35 minutes when they were much the better side, and at that point could have beaten Liverpool. And maybe when they're a bit more settled now, if that game was replayed, I think we would be better, but they would probably be better as well.
Yeah.
That is probably, along with Luton, will hopefully look like a better point away from home as the season goes on. But it's gone now from our point of view. What it shows is that Liverpool in one of their biggest, their 2 big away tests. One of them was an absolute freak that you can write off, and one of them was a really strong performance. Manchester City I think they're on about 88 point at the minute form, and that's where we need them to be. We want to get them down to sort of 84, 81, and then we'll start feeling really comfortable. But
it's ludicrous that as a statement, isn't it? If we get them down to about 88 points, then we've got a chance.
Well, because I think Liverpool look like a 90-point plus team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's the standards they've set.
Yeah, it's the standards they've set, the standards we've set with them.
Yeah, true.
Matching them blow for blow in 2 seasons where we've been 1 point. And that's where we're at. That's the broader picture over the last 5-6 seasons is that Liverpool and Manchester City have set those standards together. The fact that Liverpool are back there is amazing, and it needs to carry on. It's by no means certain. The fact that Arsenal have come and sort of joined is again hugely impressive, and it's really nice to see. I think that there is such a split. You know, there's I think it's 1 point, 2 points, 3 points between first and fifth. It's really, really tight. Even down to, you're looking at Manchester United and they're 6 points off the top. And you're like, I don't know how that's happened, because they're in crisis. And yeah, it's a much more open season so far. And you say, it's early days. We're going into the end of November. We're going towards December now, with Liverpool having a pretty clear run of how they can be top at Christmas, which includes a point at the Etihad and then winning some winnable games. While Man City have got some really, really tough ones coming up, with their weaknesses and their flaws having been exposed. So why would we not be confident at this point? You've got to be optimistic. You've got to feel like Liverpool are in this. But that said, I think lots of people will feel they're in this, up to and including Aston Villa. Which is quite something.
We've put ourselves in a brilliant position. There's no doubt about it. We all said before this period, I think most people, if we were to get 10 points from the next 12, that would be a good return. 12 obviously would have been perfect, but you are going to have off days. Is just the nature of
Sometimes
football.
It's just where the two that you drop come from feels more frustrating, but it doesn't need to, because you pick them up somewhere else. In the overall season, you're looking at, we could have just got over the line against Brighton and just got that, Gravenberch had taken that chance maybe and we'd have won the game. But like Newcastle is...
I was just going to say, you never concentrate
that's 3
on
points gained, isn't it?
Yeah, when you do this exercise in your head, you look at the ones where you slipped up and if only Gravenberch has scored at Brighton, but you don't go back to, pulling two out of the fire with 10 men at Newcastle. Even, our blue friends, the Konate red card that never was, a little bit of fortune perhaps in the derby, sent us on the way to victory. You don't go back and look at those. You look at the ones where you feel like... I
just want to be clear, if Konate gets sent off, it would change the game. We'd win 3-0.
Yeah, for the record.
But what you don't see is the times those things happen to the other sides, to City. I think it's still in everyone's heads. Man City have won every game this season and have a perfect record. I think that is in all of our heads. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing if it's in Liverpool's heads, because that's the Man City you have to be up against. But the Man City you might find yourself up against is the one that struggles to 81, 84.
Well, they're shipping a lot. They're shipping a lot of goals, aren't they? Like, they really are shipping a lot of goals, and we're scoring a lot of goals. So there's always a situation. You said earlier, any season, if you go to the Etihad and get a point, it's a good result. And any season, you can go to the Etihad and get beat heavily. It's always on the cards. But Liverpool are capable there of going and causing them some serious damage.
And what they've also done is they've mitigated the idea that the absolute worst case scenario after playing 13, having been to City, Brighton, Spurs, Chelsea and Newcastle, is being 4 points off. That's it. That's now the worst case scenario, and that's what yesterday gives us as a gift. Yeah. It's worth taking it to the bank list, and thank you very much indeed. Come and see me and Josh in the United States on tour. You excited?
Very excited,
Packed?
yeah. No, not packed.
Okay,
I've got to unpack from last week first.
I've got tips for you. And vote for us in the FSA Awards. Thank you very much to Green King. Thank you very much to Steve Graves, to Neil Docking, to Josh Sexton, Andy Heaton for producing, Sam Walker down for looking after the video and drawing some fabulous pictures as he's been going all the way through this. It's been a pleasure. It's the Anfield Wrap.